My tablet working yet? All right, we are now going to bring images. What is going on with my tablet? We are going to continue to bring images in to our assignment, but I am going to rename it because this is no longer Karl Assignment 1 Sketch. And a lot of you haven't saved your project at all yet. So what you want to do is say File if you're in Photoshop and Save As. Or if you're in Photopea, File, Save As PSD. And you always want to name your project with your name first, right? Then a description. And this is no longer the sketch that I'm doing because I did a digital sketch, right? This is my project. So this is Aesop Landscape. It's saving to my assignment 1 folder. I want to know where that's saving. You can also just save it to your desktop. This is what I'm working on. This file should be, whether it's in Photopea or in Photoshop, at least 40 inches by 30 inches by 300. But the one that really matters is the sketch that's floating in there. That dimension needs to be pretty sizable. So it should look somewhat like this, where there's a really thick frame of gray around your project. And that means that your project, when we crop it back down at the end of this, like we take it off of your desk and frame the collage in a mat for printing, right? We want to make sure that it's larger than 8 by 10 inches at 300 pixels per inch. So mine's like 11 by 20. All right, but right now we have that extra working space, 30 by 40 inches. I'm off of the crop tool and I'm looking at my references and I'm going to bring them in. Now when I bring them in, this is actually the most rational way to do it. So I'll ignore the first two I brought in. The most rational way is to think, what is the furthest back image you have? And I think the furthest back image was this sky that I found. Right. So all these ones I just downloaded in the last video from Pixabay, I should go ahead and put those in. Remember, you're required to use at least 5, but it's always good to get more than 5 references, right? So I'm going to bring in this sky. I'm not using it for the tree because the tree's a little bit too dark, but I love that kind of color of the sky. When I bring it in, it comes in at what is called native resolution. So this photo, if I look at the tools, and you don't have to do all of this, right, and look at the size, it is in pixel dimensions, 3,000 by 4,000 pixels. But in inches, it is 10 by 13 inches by 300, which is basically the same image or the same dimensions as my landscape, right? So when I bring this in, it shows me exactly how big those pixels are, like the real pixels without having to change anything. The problem is this is a portrait format and I want that sky to be a landscape format. So I could do this. When you bring it in, it comes in as a transform box. So I can make it bigger. But when I do that, I just grew it like 800%, right? Those sky pixels are going to get softer and softer, just like my sketch did. But the beauty of sky is soft-edged anyway. So though when there are things in the middle ground, sometimes in the foreground that have sharp edges, I'm not going to want to grow those beyond their native resolution because it will soften them too much. But if it's your background sky, which is the only part of this I need, it's okay to stretch it beyond. So those are what are called soft edges versus the hard edge elements that are going to go in front. Now, do I need it that big? No. I actually just need a portion of that sky. As much as possible, but I just need like this part of this layer, right? So I'm going to draw a lasso around it. This is going to help you practice all those tools we learned in our exercises of organizing our layers. and knowing how to warp them, adapt them. But here I'm lassoing, and then I'm going to duplicate. So this is like bringing a magazine page at its full resolution onto my desk, right? The lassoing is like choosing with a dotted line where I want to cut it out with scissors. Command J to duplicate is cutting it out with scissors. It makes a cutout of what you lassoed, and then I can delete the smart object behind it. And if I ever need that reference image again, I can just go to my reference folder to get it. So that is my background. Now it is overlapping my image exactly where I need it, right? And it's a little bit bigger than I need. Next, what goes on top of that sky? I'm going to have those mountains. So those mountains, I actually really like these ones that I got from Pixabay. And I just have to grow it a tiny bit to make it fit. Good. Now, I don't actually need the white sky of the mountains, but I'm not going to try to get a really clean cutout. So there's a difference when you're collaging between tearing, cutting. A tear is like a rough selection, right? Cutting would be a really fine-tooth selection. So this is going to be a rough cut. I'm just going to roughly cut out the sky, leaving a lot of overlap. So I want all of this for now. Why not? And then I'm going to duplicate it. Command J. And then I'm going to delete the smart object underneath. And if I need that smart object again and need to resize it, I can just get it from my references. Now, fine cutting, which we'll be doing later once I've rough cut all these, is going to be finding that exact edge. And I'm going to use tools like the magic wand with contiguous. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. And I'm going to select that out. And then I'm going to fine tune it. Let's try it at 12 sensitivity. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to add this chunk. And then if I cut it out now, I'm going to have a little halo, right? But if I say select and mask, which in Photopea is refine edge, I can actually feather that edge a little bit, that selection, and grow the selection. I'm going to do it by, looks like about 5 pixels. And now you see that selection is a little bit softer and a little bit cleaner without any kind of ghosting residue. So now it looks like those mountains are cleanly cut on that sky. The color doesn't match, the lighting doesn't match yet, but at least I have a clean cutout. I don't need to do clean cutouts yet, right? I'm mostly just going to do rough cuts right now. Place at least 5 as a rough cut composition, but then I'll go in, I'll start doing clean cuts after I've done color corrections and lighting. Because color corrections and lighting will help with those cuts, with those clean edges. All right, so the next thing, according to my sketch, and now, just like our emoji problem, I keep having to turn things off to see my sketch. So how can I reference my sketch on top of everything else? Who remembers? It had a name that uses a vegetable. Onion skinning. So how do I onion skin this? So I like make a little template of my sketch and put it on top of everything so I can see through it. I duplicate my sketch layer. I move it up on top of everything, and I set it to about 20% opacity. Actually, even a little bit lower. And then I'm going to lock it by clicking on the padlock so I don't accidentally keep selecting that onion skin layer. But now I can see, okay, there's the mountains. That kind of works with my sketch. There's the sky. Okay, what else is needed? Now I'm going to bring in the bridge. Actually, even before the bridge, I need the top of those mountains. Where were those? They were here. So I have this one, and I want this for that mountain right there. It's about the right size. So I'm going to rough cut it out. How do I do that? I use my lasso. I rough cut. I'm going to use as much as I can to kind of overlap. I'm going to take this whole chunk, and then I Command J to duplicate it, and then delete the smart object, put it underneath my onion skin layer. Okay, now I can use Command T, and because these are organic, I can hold down Shift and I can kind of stretch it, because I want the top of that mountain to go all the way to that edge. So something like that. All right, next, I need this side of the gorge, and I need the bridge. So let's do the bridge first. That goes on top. I'm going to use this one. Nice big reference from Pixabay. Shrink it down. I'm not going to worry about deleting the people yet. And the bridge is going to go right there. Right? That's right where I have it in my sketch. And yeah. How can I cut it out? Because I really only need the bridge and then the edges of that bridge. So I can do something like this. And I'll get that whole gorge. Why not? Duplicate it. Delete the smart object so I don't waste the memory. Okay, what's next? The bridge, the other side of the gorge. And that I'm going to use this one for, which I actually already brought in. It's one of these. Turn it on. Use the move tool to place it, but it needs to go on top, right? So we're building from the background forward. And I want that to kind of come in like this, and I can use Command T to enlarge it. Something like that. And maybe stretch it a little bit bigger. Now I need to cut out what I want from that. I don't need this side at all. I really just want the texture and that tree line on this edge. I'm not going to get rid of the rest. So I'll take that big chunk, cut it out, and then delete the smart object it comes from. So you see I have the bridge. I've got the cliff side. I've got the other cliff side. I've got the sky. I've got a mountain ridge. It's just being obscured by this rough cut of clouds that will get taken care of. What's left? The foreground, right? So I'm going to go right to my tree. What kind of tree do I want to use? I really like this one. It's a nice foreground tree. So I need to put it above everything. But I want it cropped off on this side for my sketch, not on that side. So how can I flip it? I can do Command T, right click, flip horizontal. There we are. And I'm going to grow it a little bit, just a little. And I might tilt it a little bit, just to be a little bit more organic. Right? Maybe stretch it that way. I could even warp it. These are organic things. Man-made things are harder to manipulate by warping, right, without losing linear perspective. Okay, I'm going to rough cut this tree out. But I'm going to keep the ground because I need to have that blend. So I'm going to hit Command J, then I'm going to delete the smart object that comes from. And I might move it down a little bit. Because we're getting in. Oh, I'm forgetting that. That's the bottom of my composition. So I don't need the tree that large. That's why we have the guides there to remind you what the aspect ratio is. And you can always change that. Like my composition can start to get taller. And that's fine as long as I have enough elements for it. Actually, I like the tree big enough so it overlaps a little bit with the gorge. Okay.